All right, good afternoon, those of you in Uganda. Good morning, those of you in the US and elsewhere. I don't know what time it is for Dr. Nico, but it's good to have you here on Civic Space TV. My name is Lynn Komdisha, and we will be taking you through some interesting conversations today on this episode of the Uganda Diaspora Show. Now, if you're aware, by now, you've seen headlines all over the place that President Museveni and his son have been accused of war crimes and crimes against, crimes against humanity, not war crimes, but crimes against humanity by hundreds of testimonies filed at the International Criminal Court. We're going to look at that and maybe a little bit at the state of the address he gave just not so long ago, sometime this week, where he was speaking on security issues in the country. So we're going to quickly take a look at the developments, especially from the ICC, and then perhaps we shall comment later on that address he gave on security issues in the country. With me today is we have Milton Alimadi, we have Francis Kamhanda, we have Dr. Nico and Miriam Chamugasho. We're going to quickly understand, but first and foremost, we have a new guest on the show who's appearing for the first time, Dr. Nico, and allow me introduce him briefly. He has a PhD in theoretical physics and works in financial industry and software development. He is the leader of the U-Vote team that built an app to monitor the Uganda presidential elections. He led the analysis to document the wide-scale fraud, which is summarized in the book. Without the contributions of many Ugandan volunteers, this book would not have been possible. So he says, but Dr. Nico, we are here purposely for a different conversation on this new case that has come up at the ICC. Quickly take us through it and the developments so far.
Yes, thank you so much, Lynn. Now, there is actually a relationship with the book Rigged that I wrote and these human rights violations that we reported to the ICC, because most of these human rights violations happened during the elections. The human rights violations were done to make sure that opposition, that Bobby Wine would not win the elections by intimidation, with rape, with murder, with abductions. That was the only way that the dictator could win those elections. And he thought he could do that with impunity. The courts in Uganda are in his hands, and fortunately there is the International Criminal Court. Fortunately there is the so-called Statute of Rome that says that if certain crimes are not possible to be to have rule of law in its own country, arrest and prosecute the victims, then the ICC is available to do it like a backup for those courts, and that is what we've done. So we have collected all that evidence that Ugandan prosecutors are not interested in because they know it would expose the dictator. We have collected that evidence. In total, it was 1,500 pages with declarations from 215 victims, all of them who are Ugandans. And we submitted that on 9th of May to the International Criminal Court. And we waited a little bit to announce it because we didn't want the International Criminal Court to think that this would be like a show that we're performing. No, we want justice to be done. They told us that they would react within 2 months. And those 2 months are over. Now we understand they are very busy. We know that Ukraine is also on their plate. So that must surely have been the reason that they're delaying a little bit. But we are very confident that they will decide to prosecute Museveni and his son and many of the people that enable him.
Dr. Nico, that's precisely where we are at the moment. But prior to this particular moment, what steps, what led us to here? And how did you collect all this evidence? Is it even enough evidence that if you go before court, for example, if the ICC said, okay, now we're ready to hear your case, is it evidence enough, or will you have again to suffer the issues because the government of Uganda is ready to defend themselves?
Mm-hmm. It's definitely enough evidence. I would even say we should have submitted earlier with less evidence. I mean, 215 statements, it's a little bit overkill. We could have submitted with 100 as well. However, the advantage of having 215 and the advantage that almost half of those are actually abroad, are outside of Uganda. So when we know that the dictator would like to arrest those people and silence them, but it's not going to work because most of them are abroad, and the most well-known is Kakwenza Rukirabashaya. We all know his book, Savage Avenger, that was released this month. He met in the torture chambers multiple times with Mohozi, with the dictator's son. And the level of detail that Kakwenza is giving makes it a very powerful statement. So powerful that I read Andrew Mwende was replying that yes, it is official. It is true that Kakwenza was tortured, because obviously it is undeniable if you look at that back of Kakwenza, right? But then he asked who is doing that. He was doubting that whether his master Mohozi was doing it. Well, my counter question is, who else would be doing it, right? They control the government, and I have not seen any kind of investigation into Kakwenza's torture. No, the only thing I've seen is trials to prevent Kakwenza from going out of the country, and then preventing his children to get passports, and trying to sabotage him. I've not seen any try by the Ugandan government to find the ones that tortured him. So that reply by Mwende doesn't have any credibility.
Right, sounds very interesting. And I see here, if I could, highlight a few of the issues highlighted. The documents contain detailed allegations of torture of anti-government politicians and activists who say they were arbitrarily arrested and held in torture centers where they were allegedly questioned about their ties to Bobi Wine. The testimonies collected refer to as many as 215 people, and the first newspaper to report it was The Guardian, which received the information from the applicant's lawyer, Bruce Afron, after the complaint was filed last May. Wait, it was filed last May. Months later is when we're just getting to know about it. Okay, let me just speak a few of your minds, Milton and the rest on the call. Milton, I know we have had conversations around this. Some of these things have, come to the fore in many of our conversations. But right now, with this case before the ICC, do you think it holds water?
I don't understand the question. Of course, torture, mass murder, human rights abuses always holds water. And it's no secret that these things are going on in Uganda. So I think there's no need to give the benefit of the doubt to an outrageous tyrant, a murderous tyrant like Field Marshal Yoweri Museveni, because he, unlike other ruthless dictators, does not make any pretense about his use of violence and militarism. I think The difference with what is going on right now is the publicity that has accompanied this coverage by major publications such as the New York Times and the Guardian, and then other media outlets, is what gives it a lot of strength and capital to all the opponents of this regime of torture, the regime of tyranny, a regime of corruption, a regime of election theft. So now the question is, what is to be done? What will happen next? And that is why the importance of publicity is critical here. All the opponents of this murderous regime must keep this news in the limelight. So I've already been discussing with others what needs to be done. We have to make sure that everybody is aware of this development. We should keep it alive in all the protests, whether they're physical protests, whether they're digital online protests. People must be reminded of these serious accusations, because it's one thing to have the accusation and then to actually get an indictment. Now, the court might argue that it takes time. Okay, we realize it takes time, but it did not take that long to issue an indictment when it came to Libya, when NATO had determined that it was in the Western interest to take out Gaddafi. It was a matter of mere weeks, several weeks, before indictments for crimes against humanity were issued. There's been an indictment on President Putin within a matter of months after the conflict erupted, the war between Ukraine and Russia. So I think it's important for Ugandans to make it quite abundantly clear that our lives, we are not second-class citizens of the world. Our suffering is no less painful. In fact, our suffering has been going on for too long compared to these other countries where indictments were issued. And then the new criticism has been that, oh, the ICC is focusing on too many African rulers or cases that are in Africa. Well, that may be true, but when you have most of these type of outrageous violence going on in African countries, where would you expect the focus to be? And it's, of course, not exclusively in Africa, just given the example I just gave with Putin now also being indicted. So we have to demand that we are not second-class citizens. Our suffering is not inferior. Keep this in the limelight. Tweet, get the headline from the New York Times. In fact, the headline from the Guardian that you read is good, but it's not as strong. The New York Times headline says, Ugandan president and his son are accused of crimes against humanity. This is a very, very serious headline, as serious as it can get in a major publication like the New York Times. And this is the good thing about it. The political class reads the New York Times and they take that signal from the New York Times. The business community, the international aid agencies, major organizations like the World Bank and the IMF, when they see this, then Field Marshal Museveni begins to become toxic for them to deal with them as if business as usual. So Museveni's relation with the Western countries prior to July 11 was different. Going forward, I think we will notice a difference between this relationship beginning July 11, 2023, when this story was published in the New York Times with this very powerful headline. It's very difficult for them to pretend business as usual, which had been the case in the past. This violence has been going on, and yet business as usual. He was invited to the White House in December to attend the U.S. Africa Business Leaders Summit. What kind of nonsense is that? When they know of the violence, the State Department issued a statement in April 2021 after the violent elections And it's still on the website of the State Department saying action will be taken against the people who are responsible for undermining this election and for being behind this violence. Yet nothing happened. That was buried. So it's very good now that we have this powerful headline, but now it's up to us to make sure that we keep the momentum going.
Right. Thank you, Milton. Francis, I'll pick your mind before I can get back to Dr. Nico. What do you make of these developments?
Well, thank you, Lynn. Thank you, fellow panelists. And I also feel relieved that lastly, the cat has been bailed, because as at a local level, as Ugandans, we subscribe to the constitution, which has been abrogated by President Museveni and his clique. And the only thing that we had to cling on was the international court, which has also now responded to the plea of Ugandans. Now, all Ugandans, regardless of whether you are a president or what, you are supposed to subscribe or you derive your mandate from the Constitution of the Republic of Uganda. And the Constitution of the Republic of Uganda, number one, does not give the president the mandate to misuse the army or the police, which for him on several occasions, including his son, they have been saying it is their army, not the army of Uganda, not the police of Ugandans. And yet by description, it is Uganda People's Defense Forces. But now it had turned to become Museveni Defense Forces. And he has said that on several occasions and platforms, including his son. And therefore, because it is his personal army, now he was no longer using the constitutional mandate of what the army is mandated to do, but rather it was now doing, the army and the police were now doing what he wishes them to do. And he thought that he had reached a level where he's the state and the state is himself. He's the law and the law is himself. Little knowing that on the 3rd of November 1986, Uganda had signed or had ratified the Convention Against Torture and Other Cruel, Inhuman, and Degrading Treatment or Punishments. So that gives us an edge to bail the cat, which has finally been done. If you look also around, I think, the 21st of June, around 1995, the International Convention on Civil and Political Rights, which all these, as Dr. Nico said, all these tortures come when we go now to exercise our constitutional right to elect our own leaders, to determine the political destiny of our country, and then the police and the army, of course, being commanded. I'm not an army person, but what I know for a fact, I can excuse the army or the police, because by nature you are supposed to execute the order of your master without questioning. After executing it, then it's when maybe it is an attack and so on. So the person who was giving the command is the president. And the son also came on several occasions. Now Kakwensa is testifying that even in the torture chamber, if you go ahead to say that, okay, the henchmen of the president, may his soul rest in peace, Eli Tumwini, when the representatives of the people said, okay, since Ugandans are crying for that they are being tortured, they are being abducted, they are cells of chambers of torture, the people's representatives, the members of parliament, let's go and verify and see the conditions. What did the late El Tumwine say on floor of parliament? He said they exist and you will not go there. And if you don't do this, we have the right to shoot and kill you. So such an outrageous statement, and when the president can't come and condemn, it casts a very wrong image on our country. contrary to even the constitution, right away from Article 20 to I think Article 29. It spells out the rights of Ugandans. And for me, I don't have any kind words, but to say even the ICC took long to react. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Francis. Dr. Nico, I know you have to leave, but we see that the Deputy Press Secretary of the President dismissed the claims against him, saying that the New York Times and the story saying that the President's political rivals were peddling wrong information. As we let you go, quickly, your comment on this and what we should look forward to.
Of course, they are saying that. What else could they say? And the evidence is so clear. I mean, this submission is a legal submission of 1,500 testimonies, but we have all seen the videos. Most of the election campaigns were live. Every Ugandan knows exactly what went on. So this reaction is just a pro forma reaction that doesn't contain any validity. If they think in a legal way, they can defend and let witnesses travel freely to The Hague to make their testimony there. If they are right, they can send their witnesses as well, right? Yeah, I would like to know those witnesses from the torture chambers where Kakwenza was, and then explain that actually he was not tortured, but they were just reading his book in the torture chambers, right? Let them send those witnesses. I think they have sufficient real means, but the only thing they come up with excuses, and all of us know that those excuses are lame. Thank you.
But before Nico goes, I would like to add something that Nico just pointed out, actually. It is very significant that Mwenda has already admitted that the torture occurred. So they know the evidence is overwhelming, it's undeniable. So that was a very important tweet by Mwenda, and we thank him for that, even though he knows exactly who tortured Kakwenda. I just wanted to say that before Nico left. And once again, enjoy your birthday week.
President Museveni has also accepted that, where he said, I watched the video and I saw that Bobi Wine was beaten well.
Yes.
So before I go, can I make some short remarks, dear Lynn? So first of all, Francis, I always find it very confusing when people refer to Museveni as the president. For me, the real president of Uganda is Robert Kyagulanyi Ssentamu, because he won the elections. You were referring to the constitution. If we hold up the constitution, then Bobi Wine is the president of Uganda. So that is the first remark I wanted to make. And I think, by the way, and I think we those who call themselves opposition need to be very consistent in that. And actually, Mr. Alamadi taught me this. Let's call Museveni what he is. You can call him general, that is undeniable, but he is not the president of Uganda. And then the second thing is obviously, why are we still, after 38 years, with this dictator? Why did it take us so long to make this submission to the International Criminal Court? Yeah. So my personal vision on this is that we need to get better organized, because we can be the majority of Ugandans, but if we are disorganized, we can never compete with those small amount of people that have the guns. And therefore, I call upon all the viewers of this program, just sitting here and watching this program is not enough. So first of all, you need to rejoin your political party, whether it's the National Unity Platform or it's the FDC. I'm talking about the real opposition, even the ANT. Join those movements again and become active. Demonstrate, and if you're in the diaspora, contact those politicians, because those politicians do not know what's going on. Maybe they flashed that New York Times headline, but they still have no clue that it's actually them in the West, even my country, the Netherlands, is supporting the dictator with 70 million every year. By the way, that poster here is the Dutch king and the Dutch prime minister, who are responsible for keeping Museveni in power. And that message can only be brought if we organize. And I'm not even talking just about organizing Ugandans, but even organizing Africans. We need to get organized as Africans. In Zimbabwe, in 1 year, in 1 month from now, elections are coming up. And exactly the same thing is going to happen in Zimbabwe as happened on 14 January 2021 in Uganda. Mr. Chamisa in Zimbabwe even has a bigger majority than Chivilanji had. I did a survey in 2021, and I know that if the elections had been honest, that Chivilanji would have had 63% of the votes. But I'm telling you that Chamisa even has more support. And when this happens, we have to understand when they're discussing Zimbabwe, they're actually also discussing Uganda. But they're trying to divide us. It's easier to put away all those separate small African countries with their very small GDPs. If we join as Africans, if we have our demonstrations together with Ugandans and people from Zimbabwe and all the other dictatorships, we are way more powerful. Yeah, that is the message that I want to give to the viewers of this program. And furthermore, we need to keep documenting human rights violations. I shared with Miriam a link that people can use to submit human rights violations. It's tinyurl.com/report-victim. And maybe, Miriam, it is possible to also put that in writing somewhere. And furthermore, for those people that are interested in reading that book, that also contains a lot of information about the human rights violations, that is tinyurl.com/rigged-report. And thank you so much for allowing me to be on this program. And I'm definitely available to come again. Thank you.
Oh, sorry, my bad. Dr. Nika was saying thank you so much for making time and for your comments and, of course, your insights. And we hope to catch you again next time. Also, we hope that you are talking to people who are listening to you. Because some people will listen and they'll be like, wait, what does he know? That would be a conversation for another day. Miriam, let's continue this conversation and we'll start with you. Your comments from so far, the developments on this case, and where are we headed as a country?
I would continue from where the previous speakers have. I would like to appreciate Nico and all the international human rights defenders who really come up to support us as Ugandans in our quest for justice. This is a big sacrifice on an individual, to come out and fight for another person in another country. And we appreciate all the efforts. They are all over the world. And when Ugandans feel like they are empowered, they are disempowered by the dictatorship and overwhelmed, I think they should remember that there are some people outside who are supporting them and rooting for them, and that should empower them to really continue the fight. And justice will always prevail, as they say. I would also, like I said, I want to highlight what he had said about Africans uniting in the quest for justice. The dictators are all the problems we face really are the same. The dictator in Zimbabwe or in Sudan is the same as the dictatorship in Uganda, but the balkanization of the effort makes the quest for justice, especially pushing the international bodies like IMF, the World Bank, the donor community, to really make an impactful move on such a dictators. You see, like the problem of fighting Museveni is that they see him as an ally for them. For them, they care about their interests above the interest of the Africans, of Ugandans. So they know, like Milton said, they have statements on their website ever since the violations, especially when with these elections of 2021, before the elections in 2020, when there was mass killings in Kampala, and then the re-election violence. So they have everything, and they've been issuing statements, but nothing has been done. No sanctions, no nothing against the dictatorship. And to some extent, they're the ones who empower the defense forces, the security. They're the ones who provide the guns. They're the ones who provide the dollars that keep the regime moving. But it's like a double speak. They say we condemn, but they are not condemning. They are condemning at the same time they are fueling the same injustice machinery that keeps on torturing Ugandans. So if they are to make a substantive move, if they are to really pronounce themselves so loudly and so effectively, I think a lot could be done. And like Nico and Said and Milton said, we need to amplify our voices. We need to amplify our efforts in calling for justice. And we cannot give up, because the dictator is not sleeping. He's still pushing for that. Even with admissions, their bodies we discussed here earlier, like Uganda Human Rights Commission, where the torture incidents are well documented. There are court cases of these torture cases. The President Museveni himself admitted that his forces torture people. He called it like they are uncultured, that's their way for looking for information. So he excuses it, but this is a crime against humanity. This is an injustice on individual. And even though we have the Anti-Torture Act, the anti-torture laws, and disciplinary, the bylaws, which guard our security forces, they have done nothing to apprehend the culprits. For instance, we have a BBC documentary showing how the impunity of the killings was carried out, how the police and the joint forces, which included the military and other agencies, went around shooting people in the city of Kampala in 2020, but nobody was apprehended. And these are people who are so clear. You see that this is so and so shooting people, but nothing has been done to these killers. And then Francis, you said that you excuse these officers because they follow orders. I would like to disagree with you, because our torture laws say that everybody is liable for their individual crimes when it comes to torture. Whether you are under so and so's command, when it comes to violating the law, you are on your own. So these people, these officers, that law empowers the security forces to stand up against their bosses and say, hey, this is a violation of the law. There is no command which should be above the law. So you cannot command an illegality. And if someone below you or your subordinate disagrees to commit a crime, you cannot call a crime a command. That's illegal in itself, and it's a violation. So you are two wrongs don't make a right. And whoever follows a wrong command and whoever gives a wrong command, they are all offside. They are all responsible for that crime.
Yes, indeed, Miriam, a very interesting one there. And but if I could go back to what Francis mentioned before I can come to Milton. Francis, you were talking about lack of accountability in regards to these torture issues, and we've had countless conversations about these issues, and we seem not to get accountability. But if I remember correctly, the president did come forward, condemned these acts, and actually issued directives for these people to actually be arrested, investigations carried out for some of the incidences that we have seen, happen. And he does not condone torture or people. He often comes forward and says, we have to deal with the people who are doing this. Clearly, yes, you're targeting the military or the security personnel. But for some reason, we have seen the president come forward and actually say, this is wrong and we do not accept it as the government, as NRM, as the president. And he said he's instituted investigations. Some security personnel have been arrested. And so when I see all this coming up, it looks like the country or the government, in particular, is not paying extra attention. Milton, oftentimes you have said that he is a dictator and he ought to, be reminded that he is a dictator and doing all these things. But can a dictator really accept his mistakes? Because oftentimes he comes forward and says, we have had all these stories, we've had these reports, I've instituted some investigation, some people have been arrested. If you remember correctly, some security personnel after the elections were arrested after, torturing some people. So we are here, people out there, people out there abroad are able to tell us, you're actually comfortable to tell that there's a lot going on here. Us in the country, we are not really, making the same noise. Doesn't that bother you?
No, I disagree with you. I think people in Uganda are making the same noise. I think the people that show up when Bobby Wine has any rallies shows up in the hundreds of or tens of thousands, rather, or many thousands. The ones that the dispossessed in Uganda are the ones who want the regime of torture and killing to end. I don't imagine that the relatives of the people who are picked up by the so-called drones and tortured are not making any noise. I don't imagine that the ones who have not yet been picked up are not fearful that they might end up being the same type of victims. We saw many of the victims of these crimes during and after the election itself, during the election itself, even with live cameras around, people live streaming Bobby Wine's campaigns. We saw the assaults by the security forces in broad daylight. We saw the dictator himself, Field Marshal Museveni, boasting of having ordered the attack on the palace in Kasese in 2016 against the Musinga that led to the deaths of over 150 people, mostly women and children, completely unarmed. And it's in Al Jazeera. Anybody can Google that interview. He took credit, he boasted for it. He said, I'm the one that ordered Eluelu to commit that attack. And in fact, he followed up by promoting Eluelu. Once in a while, he has some nonsensical statement about arresting people. Nobody has been punished that we know. He always has these political statements that have no meaning at all. After all, he's still searching for the killers of Andrew Kawesi. He's still searching for the killers of Mohammed Kirumira, the commander. He's still searching for the killers of Abiliga. He always makes these nonsensical statements that we are searching, we're doing the investigation, and the culprits will be apprehended. In fact, my suggestion to people is that whatever Museveni says, you should presume it is a lie until proven otherwise. And he has a tendency of trying to divert attention. But 2 quick points. Number one, I agree completely with Miriam with some of the statements he made in terms of saying that, yes, there's torture. And unfortunately, because some of the people in the security forces, it's their culture, they're primitive. And people should take that statement seriously. It's not even funny. He's saying it because he's exploring possible defenses. He's not a foolish man. He may be a violent killer, but he's not foolish. He's already anticipating that one day he or his son could actually end up before the ICC. So what are some of the possible defenses? So when he says it's owing to the culture and lack of modern training, he's testing that defense. He's not saying it for no reason. He's the type of person that knows that based on the accumulation of violence and militarism that his regime has perpetrated against the people of Uganda, it's quite possible that one day he may end up before the ICC. And these are type of some of the defenses that he's already testing.
Yeah, sorry about that. Thank you, Milton. Francis, and if you remember what I talked about, the president has oftentimes come forward, condemns these actions. And if I could remind us, not so long ago, we saw that National Unity Platform and other activists paraded some people in Nairobi, allegedly victims of torture, victims of human rights violations. But the UPDF came forward to refute that, to dispute all those allegations, and said these were actually victims of border accidents. Some of them were really true. Those, they were true because they had evidence of the border accidents. Now here we are again, still talking about the same issues, just that now it is before the ICC.
I'm sorry, my sister. I hope you're not comparing Kakwenza and the scars on his back to border incidents. So I understand that you're trying to give the other side of the story, but sometimes you have to be careful. Border accident victims should not be discussed in the same light for Kakwenza. So, for example, if Kakwenza is listening to this show right now,
Kakwenza was not.
No. Let me finish very quickly. Just one more second. He's listening to this show right now, and he sees that the host is trying to introduce the government's own perspective into this. I don't even think that's fair. I mean, if there's something much more credible we could bring up, but to put in the same sentence, border accident victim, and somebody who's back, anybody can Google and look at, put
Milton, I have not mentioned
Kakwenza and Google that, and then put his image
and Kakwenza was not paraded before any media.
So I'm sorry, sister. I'm sorry. But go ahead. I could not hold myself back to interject in that.
I understand, but I want you to know that I did not mention Kakwenza in this.
No, but people are watching. People are watching.
He was not paraded in Nairobi.
They're making inferences by listening to what is being said. So I'm sorry, but that was not correct.
What I'm trying to clear here, Milton, is that the people who were paraded in Nairobi did not include Kakwenza.
What does that have to do with the ICC case? What does that have to do with the ICC case? The ICC case has credible documentation. So to come back and say that the government is rebutting the ICC by saying, in Nairobi, by saying in Nairobi,
these are the same evidences that are parading.
That was not a good analogy. I'm sorry.
Anyway,
if we're discussing victims, if we're discussing that particular incident in Kenya on that show, and the show today was exclusively about that incident in Kenya, then we could say, oh, the government is saying all these people that were brought out in Nairobi are actually victims. But to bring that same equation into this story today, I don't think it's fair, sister.
I'm trying to give you examples of where the government...
That's a wrong example.
And it's trying to defend itself.
That's a wrong example.
Giving examples. And like they're saying, they're coming to defend themselves as well. So let's prepare for that. But what I'm trying to say is that I'm not disputing what Kakwenza went through, all the other victims, because I am not government. I don't know what could have happened. Kakwenza had his own issues. He's told us about them. The world knows about them. Even these other victims. So we are trying to bring together what the government has been saying and versus what this evidence that is before the ICC is talking about. So clearly, I want us to be on the same page, knowing that you know that side and I have this story, and I'm trying to make sure that we know what we're talking about. So if we are at the ICC,
if the government is going to come with border victims to the ICC, I think
I don't know if you missed
I don't think they have a very strong case. Let's put it that way.
Francis, I don't know if you saw that some time back, I think about a year or so, when that happened in Nairobi, and the government was defending itself. I don't know if you saw that. What I'm trying to say is that government is definitely going to come to defend itself, and oftentimes it has. So, Francis, what do you say?
Oh, thank you, Lynn, and the other fellow panelists. I think, Lynn, one of the characteristics I know about Mr. Museveni, and then now you are talking of his government, is generally what Dr. Nico was advising us. They are very consistent at telling lies. They are very consistent at creating detours. And this has happened over time. So, the basics, the bottom of this line is the ICC. It has a team of specialized individuals or specialized people. I don't think that they would have built a case against Museveni and the son without analyzing the evidence before them. It's not the first time that in Uganda they have failed something, and then you see the ICC looks at it and then they say there is no substantial evidence. So by virtue of the fact that, I don't know whether it is also called an order paper, this one has come out on an order paper, there is overwhelming, generally, let me say there is overwhelming evidence. And it's not a matter of contestation here. Let the government, but this time it is not the government, it is Museveni and the son. You know, we should not, because if we talk the government, we are all involved in what we would call the government. This time they are singling out individuals. And for the case of Kakwensa, at least he testifies that he was visited a couple of times by Muhoozi himself. So if, for example, it is going to be in ICC, Muhoozi versus Kakwensa, you just know, evidence is there. The man has scars. We have seen, even in the courts of Uganda, where they parade victims with the burns, whether they burn them with hot flat irons or whatever, real torture. They bring somebody whom you see, literally this person should be in the hospital. You have seen where people have been denied bail. People have been retained without trial for several months and in bad condition. Generally, if we talk about human rights, like as I said, our constitution, denying somebody medical attention, you are equally like you are killing that person, or you have the intention to kill that person. So all this, I don't think that Museveni and the son, they have a case to argue. Where we may accept that, as how Milton has said, that let them bring, because Museveni is used to politics of border. You go and follow. Museveni uses politics of border. Why is it that border keeps resurfacing in each and every aspect that he talks about? When you talk about bad roads, he says the border people do this. When he's going to campaign, he brings in. So I wouldn't get surprised if I found one of these days Museveni riding a border. He's so obsessed with border. But the truth is, you can tell that this person was tortured and this person had an accident. And this time we are saying the people who have, okay, let's go back. Let's forget those who went to Nairobi. When Bob Wine was battered in Kayunga, in West Nile. So was it also border? Since when did Bob Wine become a border rider? Okay, is Kakwensa a border person? Let's begin isolating those cases and we put them aside. Okay, let us assume the majority of them were border, but does that stop the bad that happened? What about those who are dying in silence? That they cannot come out. All this is intimidation, like as we have said. If Museveni and the son want justice, freedom, liberty, let them be free, as how Dr. Nico said. Don't stop anybody. Let anybody who has a testimony freely moves out of the country to go and testify. and you will see how many. Those who will come to testify that the people were not tortured will be government officials who are always flying in vehicles with AC, like as how Bet Kamia last time said that they don't even feel potholes. Even if a vehicle breaks, they don't even feel the expense of repairing. But the truth is, Lynn, these tortures have taken place and people have overwhelming evidence. Leave alone these who are beaten. Those we can say no problem, but those who are really tortured, nails plucked out, tortured the others using electricity, shocking them, and so on. So we believe that if government has evidence, they are ready to defend themselves, let them come. But they should not shy away from the truth, because what they are doing, these are kicks of a dying horse. The truth is, torture has been in Uganda for a long time, and they thought they were unattachable. But this is the time. For me, I think they should not say these are border, because if he who alleges, if the team has come and they have alleged that they were tortured, they will prove. It is not the government to prove or Museveni to prove that this one we tortured, this one we did not torture. It is the person who went through the torture that will give evidence and who tortured them. Because I don't think that at the age, for example, of Kakwenza, he doesn't know how to differentiate that this is the Muhoozi and this is somebody else. Why of all people in the army, why is Kakwenza saying, I saw Muhoozi myself? Maybe if they come and say, no, when people go to the torture chamber, there is a way how we manipulate them or whatever they give them, and then they can't recognize anybody. Then maybe I would buy into their argument. But also that would question, okay, what did they give Kakwenza that saw a different person and is calling that person Muhoozi? So all these, I think, are overwhelming evidences, but I don't deny that the Museveni and the team will not come up with their defense. They should build it. It has nothing to do with me anyway, their defense. But for me, what we have noted, or what has been noted, and what I have also witnessed in as far as people on the other side of the political aisle, is torture has been going on in Uganda, and for a long time without anything being done. And we have reported. Who doesn't know in Uganda? Everyone, even children, are aware. Generally, I was talking to some young children last week. I was addressing them, and they said, we can't speak, the police will come and beat us. That's what the children know as the use of the police. They will come and beat us. Generally, they said they will kill you. You get the point? So if now we have reached that level, that even a baby can know, and we in the era of the reign of terror, where people would not speak or sneeze because Metternich will hear of it. Even now, pregnancies in Uganda can now tell who Museveni is in terms of the level of torture and discrimination. So these fantasies and the lies that he comes and says, for sure, like as how Milton said, he's parading. For sure, I would agree. Museveni is smart in what he does. Even when he's always intentional. So even when he's doing something wrong, he knows, and then he begins building how he will go over it. But blessed is that we are also watching. It is not that era of 1980s and so on. So there are all other things that have catch up with him that he cannot overrun or overcome. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Francis. I'm reading here comments from his team or from the government, and they're saying it's propaganda. I know it's not the first time we're hearing this. Them saying it is propaganda, and these people are looking for international sympathy and attention. And so it's not neat. The other thing is, Miriam, as I come to you, it is reported that the National Unity Platform and sympathizers and the rest, they have filed almost the same evidences before the Uganda Human Rights Commission, which Human Rights Commission did investigation and realized that the whole list, actually, according to what they're saying, that the entire list was so fake. So clearly this is a political thing and everybody's seeking attention, or there is something we are doing wrong, actually, as a country. And if I could remember what Milton said, it is about time. It is long overdue.
Lynn, I think the challenge here is how do we define torture? Francis was trying to tell you that even when they deny you medical attention, that is torture. That's abuse of your rights. But if you remember something like in Uganda, the word safe house is so common in our palace, and it means illegal detention. Generally, that is torture in itself. That's a crime against that human. You are putting in illegal detention, you are denying a visit from a lawyer or the relatives, and you are illegally detaining them for an unknown reason, which in most cases is politics. But back to Museveni's lies, I think I can say something about it. You remember Chakwa's case and Besigye when he was accused of rape, and the whole police machinery came up with a fake evidence, fake testimonies, fake all the way to detentions to the High Court and whatever, trying to pin a rape case on Besigye. But the truth came out. That was a cooked up allegation. And then there was another incident when we come to NUP. They said Bob Wine wasn't tortured. Bob Wine is somewhere in a hotel, but he came up limping and he was brutally beaten in Western Nile. We also saw that. They also came up with an allegation that he had a gun in a hotel. And we know that that was a fake allegation and the evidence is out there. So I don't know, the list is endless on Museveni's lies and trying to malign the opposition and try to cover up his crimes and all that, and dismiss cover up for his excesses as far as torture and abuse is concerned. And we all know another case in Bob Wine's case, how NRM planted the fake evidence on. You remember the guy called Benz who was killed? That was an NRM spy in NUP, and that guy came out when I think he wanted to expose something. That the president ordered his arrest or killing, whatever happened. The president admits to being a party to that. And there was no justice following. I mean, we never had any investigation into the matter. The culprits were never apprehended. So that guy was just assassinated and buried like that. But imagine if he wasn't killed, what was he supposed to do in NUP? So why does it make, why would you doubt that NRM cannot plant people when you know that they are going to take torture victims to Nairobi, and then you come up with someone limping who's going to claim, oh, I was arrested in a prison in Hoima or some other village, and I'm also a victim. Of course, nobody has mechanism to verify you are not a victim, and you can camouflage. But that one person camouflaging and pretending in order to dilute the evidence of 1,000 people who were illegally detained and who are tortured, that shouldn't discount their pain. That shouldn't discount their injustice. And of course, the planting of those so-called suspects or fake suspects is to achieve that, to create doubt, like the one you would hear any presidential whatever of NRM throwing around. But the evidence is there. The human reports of 2021, 2020, and 2022 all highlight the incidences of illegal detention, arbitrary arrests, and torture. We even have evidence of vehicles which are kidnapping people called drones. Are also all those fakes? What are they? Why are they there, even there to kidnap people? Why aren't people arrested by the police in the normal way and taken to legal detention centers and be presented in the court in the normal system? Why are they being kidnapped, tortured, put in dark vans, drove at night, they held in illegal detentions, being tortured the same way Kakwenza was tortured? Everyone knows how Kakwenza was tortured for days. There were demands for his production in courts. The government could not produce him in court because they were waiting for the wounds to heal. The same thing applies to other torture victims of NUP and other political opposition parties that have been tortured along the, and it's not starting in 2020. It's been ongoing ever since NRM came into existence. NRM has been torturing victims, whether they are FDC, whether they are UPC, the old UPC, old DP. We know how they've been tortured, illegally detained, and then when the human rights people, if you are part of civil society in Uganda, you know how much campaign goes into just one process of releasing one suspect who is illegally detained, because it's going to take everybody. It's going to take lobbying all the donors. It's going to take forever for even that one person to be released. And you are lucky if he's released intact, because in most cases he's going to be maimed or beaten and he's very sick, or either way. And if they don't torture you physically, they are going to torture you psychologically. They are going to harass you. They are going to harass your family. They are going to come and invade your house at night, push around everybody who is connected to you. So the torture incidents really are so many, unless we really, I don't know what defense the government will have, but every Ugandan knows how the security forces have been torturing Ugandans, especially people leaning to opposition side of politics, and it's recorded everywhere. The good thing today, we have people have phone cameras, and everywhere you go. I was part of election monitoring as part of Center for Constitutional Governance. We were monitoring elections of 2020, and we have recordings and evidence of torture incidences that were happening across the country, and all being done by the police officers, security agencies, and nobody, none of these officers is being apprehended or disciplined by the government. So who is answerable to those crimes? Their commanders, these officers, the commander-in-chief is the president of Uganda, or the officers themselves. Of course, the anti-torture law says the officers are liable, but even the commanders who send them to kill are also responsible. We all know how the police in November 2020, how they killed, I don't know if 2020 or 2019, when they murdered the 54 Ugandans in broad daylight on Kampala Road, on Kampala streets. What crime did these people do? And what justification does the government give? Which army officer has been detained or disciplined for that murder? Those were called murders on 54 innocent people. And nobody, not an individual, either police commander or military commander or whatever, has been brought to justice for that. Who ordered that killing? Is it the president? And who is liable? Who should we hold accountable? We really don't even need this ICC case to know that the NRM government and the President Museveni has been torturing Ugandans. This is like, okay, this is like an additional effort to the effort. But we know that even after elections, the European Parliament sanctioned the NRM government. Why were they sanctioning them? Of course, why were they sanctioning them? Of course, because of the evidence of gross abuse of human rights that was around. But the thing that is, for me, what I see is a weakness of us who are looking for justice for against the NRM regime, is that we don't make follow-up. We don't make, we try, we push at the beginning, and then, of course, we get overwhelmed and the effort dies out. Otherwise, the evidence is there, everything is there. Even if ICC decides not to prosecute Museveni for crimes of torture, the Ugandan courts one day, I'm sure we'll raise those cases because the evidence is documented. And I don't think there is limitations when it comes to such a crimes. I don't think there is time limitation. I beg to be informed because I'm not a lawyer, but the evidence is there on how this regime has been abusing Ugandans all the way for all these 45 years. And it's high time we demand justice and conclusively.
Thank you, Miriam. I want to come back to a very interesting issue that Dr. Nico hinted on just before he left about when the ICC might prosecute this issue or might look into this case. Now, it has only received testimonies and are yet to decide if there's a case or not. And we also know that the chief prosecutor of the ICC, Karim Khan, has previously stated that his office is overwhelmed with investigations of alleged war crimes in Uganda and Ukraine. So they say it may be months or years before the ICC announces whether it will investigate. And this is to you, Milton. We're now looking at the possibility of this case, seeing the light of day. The ICC has lost some sway in Africa, if you remember, and actually the Guardian hints on it. Within the last decade, many countries on the continent have threatened to leave it over its apparent disproportionate focus on prosecuting crimes occurring within Africa over those happening elsewhere in the world. Now, Uganda is among those countries threatening to leave the court. So with this case, Milton, where do you think the ICC, the future of this case rather, is as we speak, with all those issues?
Okay, very good. Well, and that is part of the weakness of the ICC. It's a very politicized organization, which is very bad, but which is sometimes good as well. Putin was indicted in record time because of politics, because of the United States influence and economic and political power globally. So it was clear to the ICC that the United States and its NATO partners wanted Putin to be indicted. So it happened. My reading is that the sand is beginning to shift beneath Field Marshal Museveni. And I say that because I read the New York Times very, very carefully. And the New York Times is an establishment publication. They have a very close relationship with the United States government officials. So to come out with a headline like this, it has political impact. And that's what I said in the beginning. The most powerful aspect of this New York Times story and the headline is the political capital that it offers to people that are determined to end dictatorship in Uganda. So will we see an indictment within the foreseeable future? The chances of making it happen are much, much more favorable today than at any time before, just because of how I'm reading the establishment publication playing up this story. If the West wants Museveni to be indicted, it can happen in a matter of months. The West has bailed out Museveni in the past. In fact, they may bring up the past issue. And let me give you that example. The Democratic Republic of the Congo took Uganda to the International Court of Justice, the ICJ, which is also in The Hague. Uganda was found liable for what amounts to war crimes in the Democratic Republic of Congo. It was assessed reparations. Initially, it was up to $6 billion. It's been negotiated down. Uganda has started making those payments already in parts. They are now amount to hundreds of millions of dollars. Uganda has basically acknowledged those crimes and started making the payment. Now, here is why this is important. The Congo took the same allegations to the ICC. And the ICC, when Moreno Ocampo was the chief prosecutor, started an investigation. And since the ICJ, which handles the civil aspect, found Uganda liable, if this investigation in the ICC continues, Museveni, as commander-in-chief, would most likely be indicted for the crimes in the Congo. Now, there was a very interesting article in the Wall Street Journal on June the 8th, 2006, and I highly recommend that people Google that. And I think the search word, if you want to find it, put Robert Kabushenga, because he was one of Museveni's spokespersons. Put Robert Kabushenga and Wall Street Journal and Lord's Resistance Army, or Joseph Coyne, and that article will come out. That article did not get sufficient play. In that article, it says Museveni contacted Kofi Annan, who at the time was the Secretary General of the United Nations, and literally begged Kofi Annan to block that criminal investigation of Uganda's, committed by Uganda's military in the Congo. And Kofi Annan said, I do not have the powers to block this ICC investigation. Now, the only countries that could block that investigation could be the permanent members of the Security Council. Most likely, it was the United States or Britain, who are the ones who have principal interest in maintaining Museveni in Uganda, who blocked that investigation in 2006. Otherwise, Museveni would have been indicted. We would have been spared a lot of the crimes he has been committing since 2006. But here's the good thing. Now that he seems to be falling out of favor with the West, two things. They can accelerate indictment on these new accusations, number one. Number two, they could allow the investigation of the crimes in the Congo to continue. And if they allow that to continue, since the ICJ already found Uganda liable, and since Uganda has already started paying for those crimes, most likely Field Marshal Museveni would be indicted. He could be indicted twice for the crimes committed by the UPDF in the Congo and for the accusations of the crimes that he and his son were involved in before, during, and after the elections in Uganda. So it depends on the political winds to answer your question. I think the political winds are not in his favor right now. But he's a very sneaky character. Even though in public he may be denouncing the West and all that, this is how he operates. At night, he's probably trying to negotiate something with the West. He will offer them, you know, now I'm doing this for you in Somalia. What else do you want me to do for you? And if he comes up with enough of a deal, once again, they may protect him. So it's our duty to make him so toxic that he cannot sell another deal to the West to protect him.
Thank you for that, Milton. Francis, still on the same issue of if the ICC is going to move forward with this case, because it has only received the testimonies, it has not even sat down to review these testimonies or even institute an investigation. So the question here would be, with its unpopularity on the African continent, where are we headed? Is the opposition, is it not shooting itself in the foot and perhaps failing at spending huge sums of money and going against a government that probably is in fertility?
Thank you, Lynn, and other fellow panelists for the contribution so far made. I think, Lynn, you are missing on a point to say that they are already strategizing themselves, and as opposition we may be in a hot soup. No, The human rights are not for the opposition. Human rights are just human rights for everyone, regardless of whether you are in government or you are in opposition, regardless of your religion, political affiliation, economic status in society. So that's where we are trying to. That should be the base. Now, for the case of Uganda, like as how Milton has put it, the case is there. But now, don't forget, Lynn. Number one, you may think it will take long. You must recall all people who have been indicted. Don't think that the ICC is losing popularity in Africa. Go and think of all people who have been indicted from Africa, and tell me one of them who is still reigning. If it is just a game, a mere game, a mere say, where is Bashir? Where is Gaddafi? Name all of them. So, yes, for now, in Uganda, Museveni may play a fantasy kind of situation, say like the way how I have been going over this is the same approach that I'm going to use. But now, this time it may not. Well, I also say that yes, the ICC may take long and more of the Ugandans and will continue suffering. But I'm telling you, it will come to pass. This time, the Museveni and his henchmen who have participated in all these crimes will be answerable, because there is a shift in the paradigm of both power and trends in as far as vigilance is concerned and as far as record keeping is concerned. That's why Milton is telling you that even something that happened in 2006, we can again go back. And for sure, this is what we is being presented as evidence is alluding exactly to other proceedings that have taken place. Like for sure, I was also like, provided we have started committing ourselves paying in Congo, is enough evidence that we accept that we committed those. So now in Uganda, if they can go and commit crimes in a country like Congo, and what hurts me most is that they do them as individuals, but when we are paying, we pay as Ugandans. I'm also paying.
Yep, that's true.
Yeah, because I pay, let's say, taxes in Uganda. We support, when we support our people back home, we are supporting the economy of Uganda. That's why I think we go wrong, because when this money is being paid, is not attached to Museveni as a person. Even he doesn't even know, because it is like has instructed, like how the Minister of Finance Kaseja just says, then it just goes like that, and nobody pays attention.
Right.
But we only pay attention when now, like the common person doesn't even know that we are paying this money. So I think that is the most other topic that we need people to know, that look here, this is how it is affecting us, and so on. And then I think it is on us to keep educating the masses as much as we can. But remember also, educating the masses about this under Article, I think it is 22, if not 21 of our Constitution. We are not allowed to move as other political parties, go and sensitize people. Otherwise, people would be, like as we have always said, as Ugandans or Ugandans back home, they lack civic education to know exactly that this is happening and this is how it affects us. People don't know. People think it is Museveni paying. People don't know that it is we, the Ugandans, who are paying. And that means that if we say liberty to economic prosperity, Museveni is denying us as Ugandans that opportunity by misusing our public funds to settle his crimes against humanity that he has committed not only in Uganda, but also elsewhere. And equally, if now we are paying for Congo, the crimes that were committed there, now it is high time. How many people have been compensated in Uganda?
Right.
Let's begin with those who were killed during the election. It was a post-election violence. And what about those who are continuously being killed? Last time, Lynn, you saw a story that was in the media about Costa, who an old man of around 80, whom Enanga alleged that came and attacked policemen in a barracks in Kampala, grabbed the guns and went running back to Kasese. So all these, if they come up, and you know how they silence the family of Costa, that if you come up, we shall, because now we shall know that you are ADF rebels. So even this ADF part of it, if we investigate, it may be a concoction. Some of these things may be a concoction of government. Because Museveni says here in his address that his intelligence is unbeatable. And now intelligence comes and slaughters young children in a school. There are a lot of question marks that can be answered. And that also, if somebody alleged and attributed it to government, I would not be surprised if people dig deeper. We may find some traces of evidence that can link. So to me, I believe, like as how Dr. Nico said, it is on us as Ugandans to keep the momentum. That even if right now he maneuvers himself out and manipulates the international scene and so on, but at some point we shall bring all these charges. Mariam had said that she doesn't know whether at some point these charges can be brought. Yes, provided they are documented. You have seen in I have seen it in Europe where people who participated, who are in their 90s, who participated in the Holocaust and those other different things, they are being charged currently. And I think one was sentenced, was it by ICC or something like that? I will go and check again my literature. So Museveni and his henchmen, they are not off the hook, even if they remain in power, using scrupulous means and intimidating, torturing, and killing. But at one point, they shall answer all these crimes that they have committed against not only Ugandan, but now we are exporting the same the same criminality and torture to other countries. Thank you.
Totally. Indeed. Thank you so much for that. Let me see what's in the chat room before I can come to you, Miriam. Okay. I agree with Francis. I don't, let me see. Okay. Right. Starts from here. Milton is saying, in fact, when they say that ICC is unpopular in Africa, this might refer to the political elite like the Musevenis, not the victims and the ordinary Africans. And Museveni is a double dealer. Museveni praised the ICC when he wanted coin to be taken out. Now that he could be the one indicted, he's condemning the ICC. That is a great point. We are compensating Congo for Museveni's crimes, but not his victims in Uganda. I agree with Francis. I do not know by the Kasese students' massacre story either. Too many questions. He goes on to say, a U.S. senator told me that the U.S. knows Museveni is determined to remain president because that is the only way to protect himself and his family. Okay, you can all use the chat room and give your questions or your comments, and let's continue. Now, Miriam, coming back to you, already you can see what we're looking at, the unpopularity of the ICC and the future of this case, but also the future of this government, considering that it is being hit from left, right, and center.
I think the ICC unpopularity, of course, if it's the pushback is expected, like Milton said. Most of the cases of abuse of human rights and war crimes are from Africa. Definitely, we have the largest number per capita of dictators in this world. We are the one which is we are the continent that is still under a lot of military dictatorship. So that would be understandable. But I think we shouldn't look at ICC alone. We can always push for justice from all corners, wherever we are. For instance, we can lobby for sanctions. We can lobby for sanctions against the regime and the culprits that are involved individually. We can lobby for real accountability even among the Ugandan judicial system. If so many people come out with evidence, there is no way that they are going to deny justice to all of us. And then there is the public court. You can demand accountability as a people, civil pressure, putting up like civil protests and raising the voices against injustice. For instance, here in USA, you can use an example of Black Lives Matter and their push against the police brutality of the people of African descent. And it works to some extent. The regime, the dictatorship is going to feel shame, is going to feel pressure. They say that people who oppress others do so because they believe their victims have no voice or power to fight back. But if you fight back, they have nowhere to hide. And power belongs to the people at the end of the day. The challenge is, how do we organize that power? How do we mobilize that power to make it strong enough to push back against the excesses of the regime? And there are so many other courts of justices that are coming up. The African court might not still be strong yet, but who knows what is going to happen tomorrow. And the East African community also has a court that is gaining some power and some momentum. So in this day and age, a lot of changes are happening as far as the global politics are concerned. So people who are fighting for human rights and justice shouldn't give up. Actually, we should be more empowered and we should be more positive that it's high time that the impunity in Africa stops. It's high time that the dictators know that African peoples, whether they are Ugandan or Congolese or whatever, they also deserve rights. They also deserve to live with dignity as other humans are concerned. And they also have the political power to decide who should be their leader and how that leader should govern them. So the excuse they give that democracy is not African, can you also say that human rights is not African? Yeah, by the way, they also parade that. Milton said that when you hear Museveni say something, don't take it for granted. He is building like a basis for defense against one of his excesses. You know, they say democracy is an-African. They say human rights is a Western-based ideology that doesn't apply to Africa, as if Africans are not human. So it's as if we are like cows supposed to be tortured or whatever. I mean, even animals have rights. So if we are not human, what are they? Are they zookeepers? Or they are also not human and they are not supposed to be leading Ugandans? So the issue is nobody should accept torture. We should hold ourselves up to a certain standard. We should be aware, like Francis said, we need to teach civic awareness. We need to create civic awareness of people need to be aware of their rights. People need to know that nobody has a right to destroy anybody's life. Whether you are a president or not, you have no right whatsoever to torture or kill someone because simply you don't agree with them politically. Those old stories of Nsegula Minambo, that's nonsense, is really trash and it doesn't hold in 21st century. And we deserve better. Today, Uganda is one of the youngest countries in the world. Young meaning it has the most youngest population, but it also means it has the most skilled, most vibrant, most energetic, most aware, and that population deserve a new start, a fresh start, deserve to live in a country which respects them, deserve to live in a country which gives them power to determine their future. And it's upon us really to create that as Ugandans.
ball is in our court, really. It's entirely up to us to do what's required of us. Okay, still in the chat room, wasn't to say, okay, let me see where it starts from. Oh, all right. Okay, I think it's here. So he says, keeps running away from me. Sorry about that. A US senator told me, I think I should start from there. If the question is asked of Africans, do you want the corrupt dictators in Africa removed? Clearly, the poll would be 99% in favor. So the ICC's popularity is a moot point. Miriam is right. All Africans are victims of dictatorship. We need to find effective slogans that mobilize all Africans against dictatorships, similar to Black Lives Matter. And Francis comes in to say, I think the exposure is enormous and the panic in the leadership of Uganda is evident that this time it is serious and not business as usual. Let Museveni, like Uhuru did, appear in court himself if he's innocent. Okay, and this brings me back to you, Milton. Here we are now, and if I could pick from what Miriam was saying, we need to take up, like you already hinted as well, we need a movement that, like the Black Lives Matter. Miriam says it is up to us as a country, as Ugandans, to make sure that we see the change that we need, indeed. And so I ask, as we begin to wind up on this conversation, it is a start of a conclusion. Milton, so what now? Here we are, of course, we have been making noise. It's not just you. Many people back home here are making noise about the legitimacy or the bad government it is. And here we are, finally, at the ICC. At the start, someone said, finally, here we are. Somebody has gone to the ICC. Now, then what? What next? Do we sit and fold our hands and wait for the ICC to, comment or do something? What do we do next?
Miriam is right. We continue the activities that we have been doing on a daily basis. We were not primarily focusing on just getting the ICC to intervene anyway. We were doing most of the activities to get these countries that support Field Marshal Museveni with finance, with weapons to stop it. So that's why we've been engaging against the World Bank, against the IMF, against the British government, against the United States government, and all these other agencies. And all of these have cumulative effect, and they support each other, these seemingly different efforts. Because now, when you see a story like this in the New York Times and the Guardian, it becomes very, very difficult for the World Bank and the IMF to continue business as usual. It becomes very difficult for the United States government to continue business as usual. So as the pressure mounts on the regime, that leads toward the same goal that we are all desiring. We don't have a particular hate for Museveni. We hate what he has done with the power of the presidency in Uganda as a dictator, as an absolute autocrat. And he has done anything and everything to ensure that he retains political power in Uganda, so that killing is not killing per se. The killing has a just reason in his mind, and that is to maintain himself in power. We cannot allow that. As we started in the beginning of the show, I think it was Nico who said, if Europeans can elect their leadership, Africans certainly deserve to also elect their leadership. And that has not been the case in Uganda for decades now. And that's what we are all working collectively to remove, so that every Ugandan benefits, regardless of the political party that they support. If we go back to term limits, that is the kind of democracy Uganda was trying to build. So it doesn't matter if NUP is in power today. People know that they have to come back to the electorate and make their argument. And if the argument is not effective, another political party will be allowed to form the government. That's how politics should be. It should not be, oh, now that I am in office, I will kill as many as possible. I will torture as many as possible. I will exile as many as possible. I will bribe as many as possible to maintain myself in power. That is what we want to end in Uganda, so that we can create the Africa we deserve. It's really a shame that the continent that is most richly endowed with all the resources, instead our resources building wealth for Europe, building wealth for China, building wealth for the United States. That must end. And it can only end when we have government that is accountable to the people. As they say, government of the people, by the people, for the people. That's what we need, not only in Uganda, but in all of Africa, so that we can realize our power and become a global economic power and raise the standard of living of all our people.
Yes, indeed, absolutely agree with you. Comments here in our chat room. Francis is saying, I agree with you, Milton. We need as citizens to elect our leaders than having hegemony of dictators. And that comes back to you, Francis. You have the floor now. We want to, we are here. Yes, and I'll still ask you some question. We are here. What next? Because this is not the first time we're seeing such allegations coming forward, but of course, this is a new step to the ICC. And we know that it has been going on, like you've already alluded to the fact that there's lots of torture going on and unreported. There's lots of human rights violations going on, unreported and unchecked. But here we are. Are we going to just keep talking? Because this is what we do. Are we going to keep talking, coming here, having these conversations, going to international bodies to, lay our claims, and only for us to be the same? I mean, sit back and wait. Is it the same? And for how long?
Oh, thank you, Lynn. Because that is a question to everyone, and for sure we keep looking for solutions. But as we all know, Uganda, which is something I wouldn't wish. I would wish what Milton has said, that okay, if we had a real democracy that is operating, that tomorrow I can be elected to serve, not to be served. And once I have made my contribution, I go, then another person comes in and also serves, and so on. Then he also talked about that then with these vast riches in Africa, we would even be progressing and leading at an international level, even controlling the world economy, by the way, as I might say. But because of a few individuals who are egocentric, who are self-seeking, and do not accept and see what would be the strength of all of us to have a combined or a shared responsibility, then it brings a state of confusion. But again, at the end of the day, they also don't benefit. If we can give an example of Mobutu Sese Seko, if we can give an example of Gaddafi, and so many other different examples. But then back to the question that, are we going to continue talking and talking and talking? I would say, Lynn, no, we are not going to continue like that, because time is ripe enough. If you can read about the 1848 revolutions in Europe, how it started. If you can read of recent, the Arab Spring, it started. In Uganda, we have tested, like every time people come to demonstrate and say what you are doing is bad, people are killed. But let me tell you, there will be a time when people will no longer, you know, where Museveni and the son have pushed all Ugandans, we have reached a time where we can no longer even feel pain. People can no longer even feel the reason of why they are either alive or dead. To the extent, you know, what has been holding Uganda has been that people can go back in their homes, they grow their own food and eat. But you see how much even those who are on land have been squeezed. And then that multitude of people saying, okay, we thought this was a bunch of politicians making noise about Museveni. Now it has even reached our doorsteps, because it has reached there. Now people are beginning to realize and wake up. If you have been seeing what has been taking place and observing, this to me is a good sign that as we continue pressing, a momentum is being built that at one point, which we may not, I would go with the position that Milton shared. Let people elect their leaders when they say, go, you have served. We do appreciate you have served us, but step aside and another one. But what is likely to come will be a violent one. And once a violent one comes, it leaves a power vacuum. And then you find a lot of confusion. But for sure, there is going to be, whether we call it a violent uprising or not, because the people in power or the Museveni is not realizing the disservice that he's doing to Ugandans. But we Ugandans, we are realizing, and one at a time we shall get there, because nobody knew that so far where we have reached, in as far as even the ICC saying, okay, let's listen to these Ugandans. For how long have they been crying for, and so on. But the area that we realize, and as how Milton has said, and we go back, can we put the term limit system? Can we be able to accept that the rule of law or democracy should be exercised in its full swing? Can we accept that as leaders, or leadership is answerable to the common person? They can put you there and they can remove you. Can we accept that if you are a UPDF or if you are a police, you are keeping law and order of the citizens, not keeping disorder and torture? You are defending, or you are a Uganda People's Defense Force, not a Uganda people torturing force. So not until we realize those. And then you have seen on streets, people have been confronting. Like they say, no, if you want to kill me, kill me. That is a bad scenario for a person to come. Even most of them have been even women. If you want to kill me, a policeman, you just kill me, and so on. We are tired. So to me, the moment we get more of people who have that courage, and those who are able to keep talking and engaging different international bodies, the East African community, the AU, and now the ICC, and so many other different forums, and human rights, and so on, then we have a headway. It's not that we are only talking, Lynn, but fruits are coming up. And for me, I still believe, and I'm optimistic, that we shall get to, it may not happen now, but we are on the right track and we'll get something done. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Francis. Milton has left, and he says 1848, Arab Spring, Europe in 1990s, Africa 1960s against colonialism, 1980s against apartheid. We want to avoid violent change. The ball is in Museveni's court and those upper powers that sustain him. That's what he said. Miriam here was saying we need to find a way to link African struggles against dictatorships. And he says he will catch us next time. Right. Thank you, Milton, for spending time with us. And Miriam, as we conclude, here we are. What next? And I think this is the question I keep asking on most of the conversations we have here, because you and I and the viewer out there, we need to find lasting solutions. Lasting solutions, if I may say, because we cannot keep complaining. We cannot keep running to international bodies to help, to foreign aid and all those things. And I mean, to what end, is the thing. But also, maybe a hint, and also, Francis, you could pick up as we finish up the address on security recently. President Museveni was saying, in the face of any threats, he was addressing, there's a threat of terrorism across the country. People actually on their toes. And he says ADF is not a threat. It's no longer a military problem. It's now an intelligence problem, and it's a needle in a haystack. He was also talking about crime scenes. I recently had a quarrel with the police regarding why they do not use dogs in their intelligence. Dogs are very useful. Only that Ugandans are also strange. When something happened, they all run there and dismantle the scene of the crime. He also talked about secure country. He said we have ensured a secure country at the expense of insecurity created by the colonial balkanization of Africa. Then what do? We cannot close the border. And he was talking about the border with DRC. He also commented on the school attack and says the attack on the children at the Kasese school by ADF does not mean strength, but a great weakness. They cannot attack the enemy. They only attack people that are unarmed, and a lot more. But we are still talking about security, and we also know there's a way these are related. So Miriam, your comment as we wind up, and of course I'll come back to you, Francis, on the comment on the address to the nation.
To conclude first on the torture case against Museveni, my view is that, like you said, we've been talking, and there have been so many efforts of all Ugandans and even international human rights defenders from all corners. But I think the way forward is, as we saw, like Nico hinted that dictatorship, whatever the dictatorship is doing in Uganda, the same is happening in Zimbabwe and Mali, any other African country, Sudan, to mention but a few. So my view is that if we harness all these efforts of Africans and other friends of Africa that are fighting for the liberation of Africans, and we synergize and join our hands together. For your information, Lynn, the ICC is not a foreign body. It's not an international body in that aspect, because Uganda is a signatory to that Lomé Convention. So it's part of us. It's our court. And when we go there, we just going in any other court that is supposed to address our concerns as good as we go to EAC court or African Union court. So ICC is part of our institutions as well. So we don't have to look at it as a foreign agency or something else. But we need to harness the effort. And talking about Africans, I also include the Africans in diaspora. We hinted about the Black Lives Matter, but if you're talking about the Black lives in USA, if they matter, if those lives matter, they should matter as well as the lives in Kampala, as the Black lives in Karamoja, as the Black lives in DRC. And we are strong together. We are strong united. My call goes to every other person, every African, every person of African descent and friends of Africa and bodies fighting for African liberation and the rights of Africans. Let us find a way of how to unite our efforts and push for the liberation of Africa. The same way our fathers fought for independence, the same way they fought against slave trade, the same way they fought against colonialism. Today, our current image, our current problem is neo-colonialism in form of dictatorships. The imperialists use African dictators to exploit and subdue the Africans in the continent. So it's still upon us. It should be one of our struggles to end African dictatorships, and we can start from anywhere. Everybody can start from wherever he is. But my call is that we should unite that effort so that we are stronger together. Back on the State of Nation address by, I don't know if it was State of Nation or whatever you call it, Museveni's speech on security. Same excuses, and I mean, we discussed this earlier, and Museveni is saying the failure was on his intelligence. I mean, he can come up with 1,000 excuses. The sad effect is that people are dying. So how long are we going to just give excuses as we look on as people die? ADF has been around for more than 20 years. The strong, mighty UPDF force can defeat Al-Shabaab in Somalia, can fight across the continent, but cannot defeat ADF or keep them away from the Ugandan borders. It's either lack of seriousness, it's either lack of commitment to that. I mean, we don't have our priorities right, but this shouldn't be happening. And imagine the souls of the innocent young 45 or more, and even the kidnapped. There are more than 50 young souls, young Ugandans, young families grieving, young people who have lost their lives, and you are still giving an excuse as a leader. How do we compensate those mothers who've lost their children? How do we stop this from happening again? Because it's going, if you keep up the excuses instead of solutions, it's gonna keep coming. It's gonna keep happening. Maybe today it was Kasese, but tomorrow it might be Kampala, might be any other area. But the sad fact is that Ugandans are dying, and they continue to die on something which is preventable and which shouldn't be happening. So whoever is in charge really stop the excuses. It's too much, and someone should be held accountable for this, because we can't pay you, we can't put you in charge of security, and all you give us are excuses instead of delivering what you are mandated to do.
Right. Thank you, Miriam. Francis, conclusively.
Thank you, Lynn and Mariam. When we talk of the human rights abuse, I would say that number one, as Ugandans and as government of Uganda, whoever is in power, we should learn how to respect human life or respect other human beings, and also learn how to listen to other people's opinions. And most especially if somebody is not armed, you can't just jump on that person and then you begin slaughtering or killing as if you are killing your own chicken at home. I think that should stop. Then number two, I would appeal to my fellow Ugandans that we should not always talk about it like how people will just keep talking about something. We should always follow these different attempts, because in Uganda it is evident, and in this case in particular, that people have gone to the local courts to file cases of torture or to file cases where they have lost their dear ones under unknown circumstances, and then from there to regional courts, and then finally to where we believe that, okay, this can be escalated to different levels, because all these are evidences to show that, look here, we have tried to settle this matter locally, it has failed. In terms of the region, we have failed, and then we push it to a further escalated or a body that we believe can also be in the know, and the good thing documented. Then I would also agree with what Mariam has said. We will not stop. We have done that. We will organize ourselves locally, we'll organize ourselves internationally, and we'll keep talking about these grave atrocities that are committed against Ugandans, although the government may always, they will try to defend, but we shall keep talking about them and organizing ourselves against such in any form that we may afford, or at that moment as the condition may dictate. So that one we shall keep doing it. And then I would also say that it is important that as how we are doing to keep reaching the masses, most especially at grassroots level, because most of our people at grassroots level, they don't know their rights, and they think it is a privilege that the ruling or Museveni gives. That's why they would think that Museveni gave us this, and yet little knowing that we derive this from our constitution, and it is a fundamental right that, or rights that are universal, or in any case that we are born with. Then back to the address of the president, These are the common things that he always talks. Now, if you read through when he was talking about the whole incident in Kasese, what is the instance of the president beginning by teaching the people what the meaning of the village means? What does it have to do with the massacre of children, or with the massacre of civilians, or with the failure of government, or the failure of UPDF to carry out their mandate of protecting people and their property? So all this is laying a foundation so that somebody who can easily be hoodwinked that, oh, the man knows the place, because even he knows what the name of the village means, he knows where it originated from. The question at hand is not the history of the place. The question at hand is the failure of him as the commander-in-chief to protect Ugandans, and as mandated by the constitution. And then number two, the failure of coming out to tell Ugandans the truth. That, look here, I have failed in the mandate that you charged me with, and so on. And then this argument of saying, of keep referring them to pigs, swines, and then saying if they are men, if they are real fighters, why couldn't they come and attack a barracks? If the rebels, I'm not speaking for the rebels, but if the rebels, we take it like, you can't say that they will come. They try to attack your loopholes to show you that, look here, you are not doing anything. And believe me, like as I have said, it is because some of these things, they go into, like, to go and attack those rebels without a strategy, because you know that they will fight back, and like any other, like as how he calls them, a dying horse, it will kick anywhere. Whether it's you to ensure that you guard yourself, it will kick anywhere. So they will, because if they are the way how we are calling them, they are a terrorist group. What is terrorism? To make sure they inflict fear. And the first people, the first front line are the citizens. If they can inflict fear amongst the citizens, then citizens can give them a free pass to wherever they want to head to. So for me, I still believe, and the other time I said, Lynn, that even Museveni has to think twice about his government. Like if the intelligence, as he's saying, there are gaps, are even his people in intelligence intelligent enough to detect danger? That is number one. Number two, I have always said, Museveni is covering up all the corruption tendencies. Let him go and do the structural adjustment in his rotten system, which he cannot. He doesn't have the capacity to do that, because he has outlived his usefulness in as far as mitigating some of these crimes against Ugandans, or some of these are beyond him that he can manage, but he's only wasting Ugandans' time. So to me, it is a high time that Ugandans will keep pressing until something happens. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Francis. Thank you, Miriam. And those of you who've been watching, thank you indeed. Those who joined us, Milton and Dr. Nicole, thank you so much. It's been an honor having this conversation. And I hope that we have more interesting conversations that, you know, are of impact to our country and the future of the generation that is yet to come. I wish you all a beautiful weekend, and we'll catch you again next time.